Morvenn Vahl and the Paragon Warsuits are a really good combo unit to include in an Adepta Sororitas army. My source is Battle Sister Players. I am Christian von Carmian. I play Adepta Sororitas. I know that Vahl and the Warsuits is a really strong unit. They are such a good pair that I started to avoid them when list building to have some variety in my games. And I didn't like the idea that a High Lord of Terror would appear in a 1000 point game. Even if I said, that isn't Morvenn Vahl, it's Canoness Preceptor Morvenn Vahl. 40% of your points in one unit is too much. If it gets stuck fighting 100 Zangors and you don't have the backup troops to complete missions and hold objectives, you're not going to do so well. If your opponent has a lot of light vehicles, you stomp them and it isn't much fun for either of you. 1500 points and above is fair game for Vahl and the Warsuits. Why are they so good? And what do they offer? There's very little difference between the two profiles. Morvenn Vahl is a leadership 6+, the Paragon Warsuits are leadership 7+, Paragon Warsuits are an okay objective control 2, Morvenn Vahl is objective control 3, Paragon Warsuits have 4 wounds, Morvenn Vahl has 8 wounds. But both of them have an 8-inch move, which is pretty fast, a 2+ save with a 4+ invulnerable save, that is very annoying to get through, as a few lucky rolls can prevent super powerful las cannon damage, and they have a toughness of 7. That is up from their index version, which was toughness 6. 10th edition is seeing more strength 6 weaponry, but not a lot of strength 7. This gives them more endurance, and it also means that las cannons are -1 to wound compared to before, as their strength 12 has gone from wounding on a 2+ to wounding on a 3+. It's really good. It's worth mentioning a couple of the key words that this unit has. They are vehicles, so anti-infantry weapons will not much harm them. They are walkers, which means that they can perform tank shock. Tank shock changed shortly after the Adepta Sororitas Codex was released. It was no longer based off the strength of an attack, it's about the toughness of the unit. As vehicles, when they charge in the charge phase, you can cause some mortal wounds. You would roll 7 dice, and for every 5+, you cause a mortal wound to the enemy. That's only an average of 2 mortal wounds. The unit also has the grenades keyword. In the shooting phase, before you shoot, you can attack an enemy unit within 8 inches, you roll 6 dice, for every 4+, you score a mortal wound. That is an average of 3 mortal wounds. One of these is obviously better than the other, but with enough command points, you can do both in a turn. The unit obviously has the Acts of Faith ability, where you can add in miracle dice, so that when you make a roll, like a hit roll, a wound roll, or a damage roll especially, before you roll that dice, you can add in a miracle dice, and that is the number that you rolled. Part of what makes the Paragon Warsuits especially good is their unit ability. And you combine that with Morvenn Vahl. And when you combine a character with a unit in an attached unit with the leader rules, you use all of the abilities. Under the Righteous Paragons, each time a model in this unit makes an attack, Vahl is a model in the unit. And for Morvenn Vahl's Abbess Sanctorum, while this model is leading a unit, which means this ability only works when you are a leader in an attached unit, then all of the models in the unit get the bonus. You never have to pick which one you want, you get both. The ability of the Paragon Warsuits tells us what their job is within the Adepta Sororitas army. They want to attack monsters and vehicles. You get +1 to hit and +1 to wound against them. That means you'll be hitting them on 2s. You will be wounding them on 1 better than normal, it depends on the kind of weapon that you have. This is not a unit designed to wade through infantry. And as an anti-vehicle, anti-monster unit, that is an important role within our army. That is one of the reasons that we so often see Paragon Warsuits in Adepta Sororitas armies. The Adepta Sororitas in 10th edition lacks a lot of the anti-tank of previous editions. Our melter guns are wounding most enemy vehicles on a 5+. That is really bad when we have our dedicated anti-tank weapons, and it's only going to work a third of the time if we hit, and if they don't make their save, and then we'll do some damage. Castigators can help. The Exorcist is good at taking out monsters and vehicles, but usually only the lighter ones, and it has a random number of shots, which is unfortunate. You can't fix that with a miracle dice. So if you have a unit that is dedicated to taking down land raiders, then you're able to assign them to the enemy's biggest tank knowing that you have a pretty good chance of taking it out. What about the abilities of Morvenn Vahl? The first one is Supreme Commander. Because of the Supreme Commander rule, Vahl has to be the Warlord. Most of the time this isn't a problem, and Warlord as a keyword rarely comes up. Even though you have to have Morvenn Vahl as your leader, I would still pick her as the Warlord, because about the only times the Warlord keyword comes up is when the enemy is trying to destroy a Warlord. Because of her toughness 7 and her 8 wounds, Morvenn Vahl is more difficult to kill than any of our other characters, and she has a bodyguard of Paragon Warsuits to keep her safe. The first real ability on Morvenn Vahl's datasheet is the Abbess Sanctorum. While she is leading a unit, so not when she is by herself, only when she's with Paragon Warsuits, anytime they make an attack, so this could be Overwatch, this could be combat, this could be the shooting phase, you can reroll the hit roll, you can reroll the wound roll. It is all of the rerolls. The only thing not covered is damage, and that's where we have Miracle Dice. If that sounds a bit too strong, it's not, because we're paying 170 points for the privilege. That is the most important ability of Morvenn Vahl, the one you need to not forget. Vahl's other ability is Righteous Repugnance. This comes in 2 parts. The first part is that each time you make an attack, you can discard a Miracle Dice, and if you do, then until the end of the phase you get 3 more attacks to Fidelis and the Lance of Illumination. It mentions both because you may be doing this in the shooting phase, in which case it will benefit Fidelis. Not bad to have 3 more shots with a really good heavy bolter. More likely you're going to use this in the combat phase to get 3 more attacks with the Lance of Illumination. It doesn't matter if you're doing the strike profile or the sweep profile. It's 3 more attacks. The second and separate part of this special rule, each time an enemy unit is destroyed by this model, Morvenn Vahl's model, not Morvenn Vahl's unit, Morvenn Vahl the model, you gain a Miracle Dice. Because these are separate sentences, even though they're under the same rule, they happen independently of one another. You do not need to discard a Miracle Dice to get the extra attacks, to also then get an extra Miracle Dice if Morvenn Vahl destroys a unit. Every time Morvenn Vahl destroys an enemy unit, regardless of whether or not you've discarded a Miracle Dice, you gain a Miracle Dice. Games Workshop does this with sentences. We found out more recently, with an FAQ update to Divine Intervention, there are now 2 separate parts to it. You can discard 1 to 3 Miracle Dice. Full stop. It is not a requirement to do the first part to have the second part happen where you resurrect a character. They should be separate rules for clarity, but the rules as they stand, every time an enemy unit is destroyed by Morvenn Vahl, you gain a Miracle Dice. If you are sure to destroy an enemy, cycle in a bad Miracle Dice anyway, and you may get a better one out of it. Now that we've covered the unit abilities that will affect each other, what if we didn't do that? What if we had a separate unit of Paragon Warsuits? Because you can take up to 3 units of Paragon Warsuits in your army. You can only take 1 Morvenn Vahl because she is an epic hero. Is it worth running them separately when they're so good together? Or is it worth having a unit of Paragon Warsuits apart from Morvenn Vahl? It's going to depend on the points. If Morvenn Vahl went up in points and the Paragon Warsuits went down, which is something that Games Workshop has done before, then yes. Without Vahl, the Warsuits feel like a unit of 3 Terminators. Big Terminators, like the Saturnine Terminators, but Terminators nonetheless. Whatever weapons your opponent uses to fight Terminators is the same weapon that they point at the Paragon Warsuits. Morvenn Vahl can be deployed alone, but I wouldn't. Vahl doesn't need the +1 to hit from the Paragon Warsuits, but the +1 to wound is very valuable to her. Because you share unit abilities, it isn't just the leader conferring their abilities to the unit they joined. When she's alone, which is the same as if all of her bodyguard has been destroyed, the Abbess Sanctorum rule to give the full rerolls to hit and wound no longer applies. It's just Vahl with Righteous Repugnance. She can still cause a lot of damage. Her weapon options have versatility. When you're shooting her missile launcher, you choose if you're firing 2 crack missiles or 2d6 blast frag missiles from the Sanctorum style. When you're fighting in combat, either you strike with 5 or 8 with the Righteous Repugnance attacks, so 5 to 8 strike attacks at strength 8, damage 3, or you can sweep away enemies with 10 attacks at AP -1, but 1 damage. Don't just take Vahl for the Paragon Warsuits. If you really love Vahl, you will love Vahl for Vahl. The rerolls are a small part of what she offers, and if you just want the rerolls, she isn't worth the points. Morvenn Vahl's weapon choices are locked. She has the same things all the time, you can't change up her war gear. The Paragon Warsuits have options. However, as with many things in 40k, there is a best option. That's not to say that other options don't work. Every Paragon Warsuit has a bull pistol, a choice between a heavy bolter, heavy flamer, and multi-melter. They have Paragon Storm Bolters but can change them for Paragon Grenade Launchers, and they have a Paragon Warblade but can swap it for a Paragon War Mace. You can mix inside the unit. You don't have to have the whole unit with Storm Bolters and War Maces. You could have 2 with Storm Bolters and War Maces, and 1 with the Paragon Grenade Launchers and a Paragon Warblade. The Storm Bolters will give you 2 to 4 shots, depending on if you're in rapid fire range, and they're twin-linked. However, if we're with Morvenn Vahl, we already get full rerolls to wound. Twin-linked is not an ability we need on top of that. Full rerolls to wound and full rerolls to wound gives you 1 reroll to the wound roll. You can't reroll rerolls. These are damage 1, unlike the Battle Sisters Artificer Stormbolters, which are damage 2. And these are for killing light infantry, a small number of light infantry. The rest of the Adepta Sororitas army can do that. The Paragon Warsuits, because of their ability, want to focus on monsters and vehicles. I would always swap the Stormbolters with Paragon Grenade Launchers. Yes, they're twin-linked, but that means that when they're by themselves, without Morvenn Vahl, you can still cause damage to enemy tanks because you're hitting on a 2+, wounding on probably a 5+, but it becomes a 4+ with the +1 to wound, and now you get to re-roll that. This is why they can work without Morvenn Vahl. It's just much better with Morvenn Vahl. Anti-tank is what they're designed for, anti-tank weapons are what we should pick. Light infantry charging and swamping the Paragon Warsuits didn't used to bother them because their ability let them fall back and shoot and charge, so there was little reason to take Stormbolters to get rid of those units. I would still take the Grenade Launchers. Remember strength 10 in the Bringers of Flame detachment, and whichever one you pick, you get the Grenades keyword. The Paragon Grenade Launchers are not blast, so you can fire them at point blank range with big guns never tire. Paragon Warsuits are vehicles, and when used in the Penitent host or the Champions of Faith detachment, there is a stratagem to fall back and shoot if you don't think you would survive another round of combat. If you can fall back and charge with those same stratagems, you fight first when charging. That may tip the combat in your favour. The main and important weapon choice is whether you have a heavy bolter, heavy flamer, or multi-melter on your warsuit. The heavy flamers auto-hit because they have torrent. You are wasting Morvenn Vahl's ability to reroll your hit rolls. If you have the heavy bolters, that is 3 shots per model. It's a much longer range than the multi-melters, so you're more likely to be able to fire it for like an additional turn compared to the multi-melters. They have sustained hits. You can reroll some hit rolls because you're hitting on a 2. You might as well reroll everything that isn't a 6 to try and get more 6s, which are sustained hits. Heavy bolters are 2 damage each. That is upsetting for Chaos Space Marines. The heavy bolters are underrated, but multi-melters are not overrated. Multi-melters look good on paper and perform great. Multi-melters with +1 to hit and +1 to wound, and full rerolls is what we need to take out the enemy vehicles and monsters. This is more consistent damage than an Exorcist. You use Miracle Dice on the multi-melter's damage. With other melters that don't have the full rerolls, I use a Miracle Dice of a 5 to wound the enemy if I know it will go through the armor save and there is no invulnerable save available. Some damage is better than risking no damage. With the Warsuits, I can slowly roll the damage of the multi-melters and put in a Miracle Dice before the last one to guarantee a kill. I know that Vahl wants to be the model that gets the kill, but I prefer to have the enemy unit dead instead of maybe getting a Miracle Dice when the other outcome is an enemy tank still moving and firing. If the Warsuits are by themselves, yeah, you can have the heavy flamers, but I think multi-melters are the best. You can do the Holy Trinity of 1 with heavy bolter, 1 with heavy flamer, and 1 with multi-melter, but you don't have to. The reason to do 1 of each is because everyone will think you're cool. What you want in this unit is at least 1 maul, you can have more if you prefer. The high strength of the maul can mean that you're damaging a lot of enemy tanks on a 3+, which goes to a 2+ because of the unit ability. The only difficulty with the damage 3 War Mace is the low armor penetration. The Army of Faith has a way to fix that, but I would have one Paragon War Mace, whatever the current 40k weapon equivalent is of Ugg's big stick. Big club to hit people, damage 3 for instantly killing Terminators, if we can get them to fail that save. I would have the other two with the Paragon Warblade, that's the sword. You get more attacks, it's very high strength, power fist strength, that will let you fight enemy heavy infantry like Space Marines, because of the AP -2 and the damage 2, and it will let you do pretty well against enemy tanks because we have that +1 to wound. The Paragon Warsuits with Morvenn Vahl should have a mix of weapons to break up the rolls to try and let Vahl be the model that kills an enemy unit. Morvenn Vahl only generates additional miracle dice if her model, not her unit, destroys an enemy unit. This is most applicable to the combat weapons. There is already such a variety of ranged weapons fired that you can slot in Morvenn Vahl's attacks at the best opportunity to wipe out a unit. You have to roll the attacks of all weapons with the same profile at the same time. In combat, 2 mauls, then Morvenn Vahl, might be enough to let her destroy a unit before a Paragon Warblade swings. But 3 mauls may have wiped out the enemy unit before Vahl got to fight. But rolling Vahl's attacks first may not have done enough to destroy the unit. Having the variety of weapons can let you try and get Vahl to hit at the opportune time. And it also gives you a mix of profiles to deal with a variety of enemies. Now that I've bigged up the Paragon Warsuits having multi-melters and Paragon grenade launchers, how does it perform against a really big enemy vehicle? What can it do to a Chaos Knight Despoiler? To test this, I use the app Adept Roll. This is the ultimate math hammer app for 40k. It's very quick to import the profiles into Adept Roll, then you can remove any of the weapons that you're not using. So you can get rid of the heavy flamer, you get rid of the heavy bolter, stick with the multi-melters and the grenade launchers. Add in all of the buffs that we have, so we have +1 to hit, we have +1 to wound, we can turn on full rerolls to hit from Vahl, full rerolls to wound, and we get sustained hits with one of the stratagems in the Champions of Faith. With this stratagem you can choose to have lethal hits or sustained hits. Once you've run this simulation once, try it again with the other ability to see if that gives a better outcome. It only takes a few seconds to run. Add in the Chaos Knight Despoiler as the defender profile, and then you can see from the results how many wounds you are likely to do in one activation. Adept Roll runs the simulation using tens of thousands of dice rolls behind the scenes, giving you a detailed breakdown of the hits, wounds, damage dealt, and dead models. This can give you, let's say, a confidence level on how likely you are to take out the enemy. This is the insight you can actually use in preparation for one of your battles. The app has been recently redesigned for a much better user experience. The link to try the app is in the description and as a pinned comment. You will notice that when I ran that, I also included the bolt pistols. Paragon Warsuits are vehicles. Normally you can fire all weapons except pistols, or just your pistols. Vehicles are the exception. They can also fire pistols. So don't forget the Warsuit's tiny pistols. You never know when you may need to kill one more light infantry model. Now that I've mentioned one of the stratagems, we want to talk about the detachments. Because depending on the detachments, that will give you an extra ability of sorts that provides more bonuses to the Paragon Warsuits and Morvenn Vahl. It will depend on which detachment you pick as to which bonuses you get. The good news is there is no bad detachment for them. But what sometimes happens is they miss out on some of the bonuses that other units in the detachment will get. Unlike other units that can add a character who then has an enhancement to boost the unit up, there are no enhancements to support the Paragon Warsuits. The only character that can join the Warsuits is Morvenn Vahl, and as an epic hero, she can't use enhancements. The maximum size of Paragon Warsuits is 3. That's what you get in the box. That is also the minimum size. So the Hallowed Martyrs detachment ends up being a bit of a mixed bag. There are some abilities that are really useful for the Paragon Warsuits, and some stratagems. There is also the detachment rule, which is not so good if you have Morvenn Vahl together with the Paragon Warsuits. You will never get +1 to wound. So when there's the 4 of them, they're at full strength. No bonuses. They lose one Paragon Warsuit, okay, you are below starting strength, you get +1 to hit rolls. As you lose a second Paragon Warsuit and just have one Warsuit and Vahl left, you are at half strength. You're not below half strength, so you don't get the +1 to wound. Then when the final Paragon Warsuit is destroyed, Morvenn Vahl becomes a unit by herself, at full strength, as long as she has all of her wounds. So you never get to below half strength with this unit. There is still value to taking Paragon Warsuits in the Hallowed Martyrs detachment. You can praise the Fallen. When one of the Warsuits is shot down, the others shoot back at full ballistic skill. And with Suffering and Sacrifice, the Warsuits can distract enemies with low strength attacks away from other sisters' units. Or you can do the reverse, and have another character use Suffering and Sacrifice to protect the Warsuits. A lone Canoness is the best one. Run her nearby to the Paragon Warsuits, activate the Emperor's Grace so that she has a 2+ invulnerable save, and then with Suffering and Sacrifice, any enemy attacks that can go for her have to go for her. This is a Canoness just running in, throwing her arms wide and saying, "Hit me!" And then the enemy has to hit her. The other really important stratagem in the Hallowed Martyrs detachment is Divine Intervention. You can use this on any Adepta Sororitas character except Celestine. Morvenn Vahl is an option. When Morvenn Vahl is destroyed, you can discard some miracle dice, but we're not going to. At the end of the phase, set her back up with D3 wounds. You would add 1 for every miracle dice you discarded. Because we didn't, we will get between 1 and 3 wounds back. That means that we are below half strength. Now Morvenn Vahl can use the detachment rule. Assuming she wasn't killed by precision attacks, in which case Morvenn Vahl would rejoin her unit, Morvenn Vahl's Paragon Warsuits were already destroyed, as was Morvenn Vahl, then Morvenn Vahl gets back up at the end of the phase. Unless the enemy had really good shooting to take her down and is now in a position to do a lot of damage in the close combat phase, it's going to be Morvenn Vahl to activate next. Morvenn Vahl will then move and shoot and charge the enemy with +1 to hit and +1 to wound. This is against everything, not just vehicles and monsters. You can use Paragon Warsuits to great effect in the Hallowed Martyrs detachment, but there are other detachments that will work better for them. For contrast, the Army of Faith is very good for them. This unit has multiple multi-melters as an option, and when the detachment rule lets you perform multiple acts of faith, that means that multiple multi-melters, or both shots of one multi-melter, can be doing max damage. The detachment itself also generates more miracle dice, which is very useful for Morvenn Vahl to take away bad dice and replace them with a better dice. The Army of Faith provides 3 good stratagems. Shield of Faith gives you resistance to mortal wounds. Enemies will try and put mortal wound attacks on the Paragon Warsuits because of their high toughness and high save. Mortal wounds would bypass that and their invulnerable save. The Shield of Faith gives you a 5+ resistance against those mortal wounds, and it happens once you know how many mortal wounds the enemy is going to cause. If they threw a grenade at your Paragon Warsuits and did 1 mortal wound, you don't use Shield of Faith. If they rolled 6 mortal wounds, then you activate the Shield of Faith. With the ability to do 2 acts of faith per phase, and you have a 2+ save, you can do 2 lots of 2 to make sure that your Paragon Warsuits stay alive. Use bad miracle dice where they're going to be really useful. For even more defense, Blinding Radiance causes enemies to be -1 to hit you. It works for the shooting phase or the fight phase, so if you're harder to hit, your toughness means you're difficult to wound, your armor save means you're more likely to survive, these Paragon Warsuits will keep going. This is a unit worth using the stratagems on. But for either of those 2 stratagems, if you use it on a Seraphim or Zephyrim or any jump pack unit nearby, it will affect the jump pack unit, the Paragon Warsuits, and anything else within 3 inches of the jump pack unit. Keeping your sisters close is a great idea. To boost the damage output of these Paragon Warsuits in the Army of Faith, we have Divine Guidance. Increase armor penetration by 1. The bonus AP can change the AP -4 melters that can be saved on a 6 if your opponent has a 2+ save, but if we make it AP -5, there is no save. Only the damage roll, which we have lots of miracle dice for. And this helps all of the shooting attacks. The bolt pistol, the multi-melter, and the Paragon grenade launchers. And it can help your combat attacks that need more armor penetration, like the War Mace. AP -2 will put Chaos Terminators onto their invulnerable save, and every failed save from that War Mace is a dead Terminator. The Champions of Faith is probably going to be their best detachment. You make the Paragon unit righteous by discarding a miracle dice, and then they move just a little bit faster. They hit just a little bit better. They are a little bit braver. And they can have sustained hits 1. If you had the unit with heavy bolters, you could choose lethal hits instead to go with their pre-existing sustained hits. And with their many melter weapons and grenade launcher shots and all the rest of it, if you have full rerolls to hit with Morvenn Vahl, you can try and get lots of 6s, especially if you have the safety of knowing you hit on a 2+. Surely you won't roll that many 1s. Or maybe you want to guarantee that at least 1 will hit, so you use a miracle dice of a 2. Except don't, because you're going to be discarding those miracle dice to activate the unit to become righteous. One of the best stratagems in this detachment is indefatigable dedication. You can fall back and still shoot. And if you are righteous, and Paragon Warsuit unit with Morvenn Vahl should be made righteous at every opportunity, then you can fall back and shoot and charge. This is just like having their index rule back. But you also get the +1 to hit and wound against monsters and vehicles. This is the only detachment where I had another unit of Paragon Warsuits without Morvenn Vahl. The Bringers of Flame detachment is also a good one. That gives you bonus strength to your heavy flamers and also your multi-melters to make them strength 10 when a lot of vehicles are toughness 9. Now we wound them on a 2+. Because the strength of the melter weapon is higher than the toughness of the vehicle, and the Paragon Warsuits unit ability gives them +1 to hit and +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles. The increased strength when you're within 6-inch range, at time of recording, that's the rule in the Bringers of Flame, that will also help the missiles and any other ranged weapons that the Paragon Warsuits have. If you did have all heavy flamers, Cleansing Flames as a stratagem gives devastating wounds to those torrent weapons, and with Morvenn Vahl's reroll to wound, you can get a lot of devastating wounds. I think the biggest strength of the Paragon Warsuits in the Bringers of Flame detachment is Assault. The detachment rule gives everyone Assault. This means you can advance and still shoot. Have the Paragon Warsuits and Vahl hidden and safe near the edge of a ruin. When you are ready to strike, move 8 inches around and advance and shoot. That is a long threat range. The Penitent Host detachment doesn't give you any bonuses from the detachment rule. You are not penitent, Morvenn Vahl cannot become penitent. It still has the benefit of one of the stratagems. Boundless Zeal lets you fall back and shoot. Or you can fall back and charge. When you charge, you fight first. That is the charge bonus of charging. It's only that stratagem, but that's a useful one for getting the Paragon Warsuits out of danger and getting them into the thing you want to destroy. Move the Warsuits up with the other Penitent units. As the Archoflagellant and the Repentia are carving into the enemy infantry, Vahl and the Warsuits strike at the enemy tanks and monsters. If you want to buy Paragon Warsuits or Morvenn Vahl, check the links in the description. There are links there to my affiliates, from whom you can buy the Warsuits cheaper than going through Games Workshop. For each of those detachments, I only covered the briefest part of them, how the Paragon Warsuits fit within the detachment. There is much more advice for the detachments as a whole and a whole playlist to choose from, depending on your favourite detachment. Then you will know not just how to use the Paragon Warsuits and Morvenn Vahl within that detachment, you will know how to use all of the Adepta Sororitas units. Take a look and have a great day of 40k.